This is CBC Vancouver News.
I know that many Canadians, particularly members of the Sikh community, are feeling uneasy and perhaps even frightened right now.
A day after 3 Indian nationals are arrested and charged with murder in the death of Sikh activist Harj Singh Neer, Canada's Prime Minister is reassuring the Sikh community that persecution won't be tolerated. And police are investigating an alleged homicide at a rural property in Mission that has left a 25-year-old man dead. Plus,
does not fit the exact niche that we need, which is affordable and accessible housing.
dozens of downtown Eastside residents say BC's new housing legislations won't help those living below the poverty line. They are calling on the province to better preserve humane, low-income housing. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. We're seeing strong reaction today after police announced 3 Indian nationals have been arrested and charged in the killing of prominent Sikh activist Harj Singh Neer in Surrey. Sources tell CBC News investigators believe the men were part of a hit squad directed by the Indian government. Neer was gunned down outside his temple in Surrey last summer. Members of the Sikh community are welcoming the news of the arrests, but say they want action taken against India. And now we're getting reaction from India. The country's foreign minister is accusing Canada of welcoming people with links to organized crime in Punjab.
The party in power in Canada, other parties in Canada have given these kinds of extremism, separatism, advocates of violence a certain legitimacy in the name of free speech. Okay, I mean, somebody may have been arrested, the police may have done some investigation. But the fact is, number of gangland people, number of people with organized crime links from Punjab have been made welcome in Canada. We have been telling Canada, saying, look, these are wanted criminals from India. You have given them visas, they have come, many of them in false documentation. And yet you allow them to live there. If you decide to import for political purposes people with very dubious, actually very negative background, there will be issues.
As we heard, the news of the arrest has sparked concern across BC and much of Canada when it comes to issues of national security. The CBC's Albert De La Talla has more.
Pretty much immediately after we heard about the 3 arrests, or the arrest of the 3 men in that alleged hit squad, we heard from the Sikh Gurdwara where Harj Singh Neer served as president and where he was killed. The General Secretary began in a news conference yesterday by reading a statement on behalf of the temple describing Neer and contrasting him to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Have a listen.
He was an upright individual, a peaceful man with a demonstrated commitment to community service. By contrast, in the light of Prime Minister Modi's own statements, he is a murderer who recently proclaimed in a speech that this new India comes into your home to kill you.
So what he was talking about there at the end was that while Modi has strongly denied any connection between India and the killing, he has alluded to these and similar allegations while on the campaign trail during the ongoing elections there. He said in a rally in April that, quote, "Today even India's enemies know this is Modi, this is the new India. This new India comes into your home to kill you." So kind of alluding to some of those allegations. BC's former premier, Ujjwal Dosanjh, he weighed into this. He said that if India is responsible, it needs to be exposed and that democracies should not be taking such actions.
If that started happening all over the world, nobody would be safe anywhere. No immigrants would be safe in other countries. So I think that's a very serious problem. If India is involved, we need to know. And hopefully this is the beginning of that discovery that all of us are on now. I am not confident at all that we will know the whole truth, ever. But hopefully, through the trial, we will know substantially the truth of what happened.
As we've been reporting, Niger was a prominent Sikh activist, and he advocated for an independent Sikh state called Khalistan. And for those activities, India did declare him a terrorist. Members of that Gurdwara, they say that the arrest put into context how India allegedly operates.
In terms of the arrest of these 3 individuals on the street level who are believed to have actually carried out the assassination, I think it's important to put it in that fuller context of how India operates and conducts these kinds of activities.
I think the idea of safety will only be kind of relevant if India is actually held accountable. Calling them out, I think, has always been one part of it. What are we going to do about it, I think, has been the question that's been lingering.
And following those arrests, the federal safety minister, Dominic LeBlanc, he congratulated the RCMP. He said they had made significant progress into figuring out what led to the murder of Harj Singh Neer.
That's the CBC's Albert Delatala reporting. At a gala celebrating Sikh heritage and culture in Toronto tonight, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau touted Canada as a rule of law country, reassuring Sikh Canadians that persecution won't be tolerated.
This is important because Canada is a rule of law country with a strong and independent justice system, as well as a fundamental commitment to protecting all its citizens. I know that many Canadians, particularly members of the Sikh community, are feeling uneasy and perhaps even frightened right now. Well, every Canadian has the fundamental right to live safely and free from discrimination and threats of violence in Canada.
Trudeau's comments come a day after 3 Indian nationals were arrested in Edmonton and charged with murder in the death of Sikh activist Harj Singh Neer in Surrey. A few months after Nier's death, Trudeau cited credible allegations of Indian government involvement, prompting a diplomatic crisis with New Delhi. Police are investigating an alleged homicide at a rural property in Mission after a man died last night. Mounties say they received a report from BC Ambulance Services around 11 o'clock at a home on Dudney Trunk Road near Yass Street. When officers arrived, they found a 25-year-old man who was unresponsive and could not be resuscitated. A suspect was arrested and remains in police custody. Police didn't indicate if the suspect has been charged in the man's death. IHIT is now investigating. Anyone with information is asked to contact them. 2 men have been charged with manslaughter in connection with the death of a teen in Williams Lake 2 years ago. On May 5th, 2022, 19-year-old Richard Todd was stabbed to death on Midnight Drive in what police believe to be a targeted attack. Now, nearly 2 years to the day after Todd's killing, Mounties say 26-year-old Michael Bauer and 25-year-old Garrett Shuri have been arrested and charged with manslaughter. Both men remain in custody and will appear in court. As the province makes moves to increase housing stock in BC, some residents who live on the downtown east side say it won't help them much. Today, a march for housing on Hastings was held. Sarab Sandhu has more on what advocates are calling for.
Hell no, we won't go! Hell no, we won't go!
Dozens of people took to the streets of the downtown east side Saturday, carrying signs, waving flags, and holding a housing crisis meter.
Hell no, we won't go!
Marchers here are calling on the province to better preserve low-income housing on Hastings. They say there is a dire need for affordable and humane housing for people living below the poverty line.
There's a few things that we could do very immediately, like speed up the development of this building. We could get about 120 shelter rate units within this that are affordable, especially to seniors.
Some here say the province's move to restrict short-term rentals with the aim of increasing housing supply will not help people on welfare, disability, and basic pension.
New developers that are coming in to fit the province's mandate of new housing does not fit the exact niche that we need, which is affordable and accessible housing.
True, new housing typically will not be affordable to low-income households because new housing is a luxury.
However, he says the new rules may help in the end.
What low-income households can hope for with new housing supply is that you're absorbing demand of more affluent renters, so those more affluent renters aren't looking for the older apartments in the basement suites.
He says a combination of strategies are needed to find a long-term solution for housing vulnerable people, including more below-market rental housing and income support for those struggling to secure appropriate housing.
We are focusing on the downtown east side, but we realize that this is a whole continuum of issues that everybody's affected in. The crisis situation down here really cannot afford any delay.
O'Leary says houselessness in Vancouver is predicted to grow to at least 4,700 by 2030. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
One of Canada's largest airlines, WestJet, has issued a 72-hour lockout notice to the union representing maintenance workers. That means a work stoppage could happen as early as Tuesday unless a deal is reached. Negotiations between WestJet and the union have been ongoing since September. The airline says the union has come to the table with unreasonable demands and expectations. A rep from the maintenance workers union tells CBC News that they hope WestJet will return to the bargaining table in order to reach an agreement and not disrupt operations. Meanwhile, after a week of closures, London Drugs is gradually reopening its stores across Western Canada following a cyber attack. The pharmacy chain says it's working with its nearly 80 stores in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba to get them back up and running. They are asking for patience, but they aren't saying which stores are reopening and when. Pharmacists will continue to fill emergency prescriptions and help with urgent needs. The company says its investigation so far shows no evidence that customer data has been compromised. That includes pharmacy patients. The president of Doctors of BC is proposing the province and healthcare providers set a more ambitious goal for reducing hospital wait times. While he acknowledges the new hospital and cancer centre in Surrey and cancer centres in Kamloops, Nanaimo and Burnaby are steps in the right direction, he says Canadians wait longer than most other places around the world for health care procedures.
I think we just need to commit even further along that path. So, for example, we've announced 2,500 new long-term care beds. We probably need to announce 5,000 or 7,500 new long-term care beds.
He wants BC to commit to reaching the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's average of 4.3 hospital beds per 1,000 people by 2035. Currently, we have 1.95 hospital beds per 1,000 people. Health Minister Adrian Dix says the province has been playing catch-up.
That we went a couple of decades without taking very many steps at all. And so the major steps we're taking now are not just for the next 10 years, but kind of for the last 10 years as well.
Dix says with an 11% population increase in the province over the last 3 years, growing to meet those needs is a challenge. To help preserve Metro Vancouver's supply of treated drinking water, residents and businesses will now be limited to watering their lawns once a week. It's part of the region's new water restrictions. As Ali Patargay reports, it's forcing some gardeners to seek out creative ways to keep their lawns looking lush.
Hot and dry conditions are becoming more common in BC, and those are key concerns for gardeners. With lawn watering restrictions now in effect, people are questioning how they can maintain their yards and gardens while using minimal water. The Jane's Walk, Mow It or Grow It event is aiming to help them find a solution.
It's got a lot of native plants that are growing here, and you can obviously see that it's low maintenance.
Low maintenance is what some gardeners are looking for this summer. Plants that require less watering but can still flourish amid droughts. At this old Vancouver neighborhood between Yukon and Columbia Streets, gardeners can find inspiration for alternative, diverse lawns. Yards with minimal grass but lush with plants, trees, vegetable gardens, and insect habitats. It's where John Shinnick and Judy Shinnick lead the Mow It or Grow It walking tour, hoping to plant a few ideas on attendees.
Gives you alternatives to what kinds of things you can do at home, putting in plants that not only help the community enjoy the walks around the neighborhood, but they also provide homes for insects and things that are needing them right now.
Last year, drought conditions reached their highest level in parts of BC. This year, the BC River Forecast Centre is warning that the province's snowpack is the lowest it's ever been at this time of year, 63% of normal. All the while, Metro Vancouver expects a 50% increase in water use over the summer.
There's so many things that you can grow now that are more drought tolerant, because many of the nurseries are starting to focus on that. Native plants are often a good way to go. They're not as showy as maybe some of the other flowers are, but they are going to adapt better to our current climate.
The David Suzuki Foundation has a program to curb the ecological footprint of turf grass lawns, or lawns with a traditional bed of grass. It's called Lawn Share.
We're encouraging people just to look at lawns in a different way, because they do use an incredible amount of water. Some studies say that they use about a third of the water in urban and suburban areas.
Hannington says having more native plants not only requires less water, but could also reduce pesticides and herbicides, which then help pollinators beautify areas.
You know, it can be a challenge because people aren't used to that. They like their lawns. You've even seen what the city has done in some areas where they've planted native wildflowers. It looks really beautiful.
A sight he hopes to see growing in more yards going forward. Ali Patarga, CBC News, Vancouver.
Princess Anne was in Victoria this morning as part of her 3-day visit to Canada. One of her first stops was a local farm where she learned about sustainable food practices.
We only got the farm in March, so to have her take such an interest in sustainable agriculture and food systems, especially on such a small little patch of land, is really exciting for us.
Dozens of royal watchers stood by with cameras ready to capture a glimpse of the princess aboard the HMCS Max Bernays as she was greeted with a 21-gun salute. She also made a trip to a nearby veterans cemetery where she laid a wreath and spoke with local community members. The princess is expected to attend a commemorative service marking the Battle of the Atlantic at the BC Legislature tomorrow. The Vancouver Whitecaps is celebrating 50 years of soccer history this weekend. Club CEO Axel Schuster joined Dan Burrett yesterday to talk about the team.
We feel that we are a little part of a bigger story, but also of a bigger thing. It's a good feeling to know how much this club means to the city already since a long time, how much support you get, and that you are working on something meaningful.
A special ceremony was held tonight ahead of the Whitecaps match against Austin FC with Whitecaps alumni. Players say energy in the stadium has been electric as the team celebrates being the longest running soccer club in Canadian history. The Vancouver Whitecaps are currently third in the Western Conference. Efforts have intensified to secure a deal for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages, with talks resuming in Cairo. We'll have that story after the break. Efforts to secure a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas have intensified. Talks have resumed in Egypt for a potential agreement that would temporarily pause the fighting in return for the release of Israeli hostages. The CBC's Chris Reyes has the latest.
More Israeli airstrikes, more deaths in Gaza as negotiators attempt another ceasefire deal. A Hamas delegation is now meeting with U.S., Egyptian, and Qatari officials in Cairo, among them CIA Director Bill Burns.
And the reality in this moment is the only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas.
The deal on the table calls for the release of some Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, a ceasefire, and staving off an Israeli offensive in Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians are sheltering. According to reports, the deal would happen in phases, with the first one lasting more than a month.
In my experience, these negotiations usually have two speeds, slow and slower. At the same time, I think we're probably closer now than we've ever been before.
It's the latest effort since the October 7 Hamas attacks on Israel. Other deals have failed to result in a long-term ceasefire.
If we see in the coming hours or days an Israeli senior delegation going to Cairo, we will know that there is forward movement and this is being taken seriously.
In Tel Aviv, more protests demanding that the Israeli government reach a deal to release the hostages.
Until this is real and until I will see hostages actually coming back, I won't think about it too much.
Pressure is mounting on Israel to end the war as the situation in Gaza grows more dire by the day. The head of the UN's World Food Program says the northern part of the enclave is now in a full-blown famine that's quickly spreading to the south.
It's horror. It's so hard to look at and it's so hard to hear also. So I'm so hoping that we can get a ceasefire and begin to feed these people, especially in the north, in a much faster fashion.
It's believed that more than 100 Israelis are still being held hostage in Gaza by Hamas. According to the UN, more than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed since Israel launched its military offensive into the enclave. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Here we have a live shot of White Rock Pier. After the break, a Vancouver aquarium celebrity meets her namesake.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
All right, it is time now to take a look at our weekend weather. Let's begin with a look at tonight's forecast. Dease Lake, 2 degrees overnight, and Fort St. John around the same, in Prince George as well. In Kamloops, 8 overnight with some rain, and on Vancouver Island in Victoria, 10 overnight with some rain as well. So we're definitely seeing those warmer temperatures even as we go overnight. And for tomorrow, Dease Lake at a high of 10 for tomorrow with some rain. Fort St. John warming right up to a high of 19 for tomorrow. Prince George a high of 20, same in Williams Lake with some chances of thunderstorms throughout the day. Much wetter on the island, Victoria, a high of 14 with precipitation. And here in Metro Vancouver, we're going to see about a 30% chance of showers for tomorrow. That's going to increase to about a 60% chance for Monday with rain and a high of 13, but that will dry right up for Tuesday with a high of 14. A seal living at the Vancouver Aquarium is still a little starstruck after meeting her famous namesake earlier this week. Hollywood actress Jessica Biel shared a video on Instagram Thursday when she met her new friend, Jessica Seal.
Jessica Seal is definitely the mischievous seal of our little family. Always up to no good.
In the post, Biel describes the seal as thriving at the aquarium. In 2019, Jessica Seal was found emancipated and lethargic on Kitsilano Beach with 23 birdshot pellets embedded in her face. The post goes on to thank the aquarium for the work they do and the special experience. That is your late news for this Saturday. Thank you so much for watching. To keep up to date with news at any hour, you can head to our website at cbc.ca. Have a great night.